Ray, I would like to welcome, and it's my privilege to introduce you. So, Dr. Ranjana Ray is Professor Emeritus, and she's also the former professor and Emeritus Fellow UGC of the Department of Anthropology, Calcutta University. Dr. Ray taught in the Department of Anthropology, University of Calcutta since 1974. She was the guest faculty at Sociology, Women's Studies Research Center, Calcutta University, and Indology, Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Research and Culture, Gold Park. She had her education in Lady Brabourne College, Calcutta University, and Hawaii University. She was the recipient of East West Center Fellowship for Graduate Studies. She got research experience for 56 years. She published 106 scientific papers, 10 edited books. At present, she is elected as Anthropological Secretary of the Asiatic Society. She is also the member of the Permanent Council of the International Union for Prehistoric and Protohistoric Sciences, a body of the UNESCO, and of International Forum for the Archaeological Heritage Policies and Strategies. She convened a number of national and international seminars on cultural heritage management policies with a focus on ethnic groups. Ma'am, it's my privilege and I feel honored to invite you to be the last speaker of day 2. And ma'am, you have a PowerPoint presentation. So, would you like to
Yes.
show your presentation by yourself?
Yes, if it happens, I'll try because shall I try it now? Thank you very much
Yes,
for
yes,
giving
ma'am.
rather illuminating lectures and interesting. I was engrossed in it. So I'll try now. Okay. It says share the
Otherwise, we are always here to help you.
say share the screen. Okay. So the full screen, then share. You are sharing the screen. What happens? Okay. So now I have it. Uh, uh, as you can see from the
We
top,
can see the slide, ma'am.
you
It's
can
visible.
okay,
Yes.
good. So it's mainly as the theme of the seminar told that it should be on research methodology in social science. But my focus is heritage. Now, Indic is also simultaneously used as Indology, which are things which are related to South Asia. It is the academic study of the history, culture, language, and literature of the Indian subcontinent, covering modern day India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and part of Afghanistan and Nepal. So, Indology as a subject is really started by the British era, and but it has got a long history, and it goes back uh, to the classical study where Megasthenes, as you know, he came to India as an ambassador, Greek ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, and on the basis of his experience of his stay in India, he composed a 4 volume book called Indica. And there are still fragments which are available, and it also had influenced the classical geographers like Arrian, Diodor, Strabo. But actually, William Jones established Asiatic Society in Calcutta in 1784, and this was a revolutionary event for the study of Indology because he started the system with a journal known at that time as Asiatic Researches, and now it is called Journal of the Asiatic Society. And with the effort of the other stalwarts like Henry Goldbrook, August Wilhelm Schlegel, the subject as Indology was strongly established, but that was under the influence of the British during the time of the British regime. Now, since I am an anthropology, where and anthropology is a social science, I would like to more focus on the approaches that we take for the study of culture and heritage. And as you know, there are major branches: physical, sociocultural, archaeological, and linguistic. So, in a way, it is a holistic study of man, starting with biology, the behavioral aspect, the earlier evolutionary aspect, and then linguistic anthropology. All of them are interrelated to each other. Biology is the important factor. And when we talk about the scope of anthropology, we find these are the basic things: biology, where we have the mainly the body, the muscles, the brain, all the structures of the body, even the DNA. And culture is a behavioral aspect, and culture is very much culture and society is a behavioral aspect which is very much dependent on the biology of man. With biology, change, development, culture also developed. And environment, because environment varies from one area to the other, and it influences the biology, it influences the culture, it influences the interaction of man in the environment to live. Space is important because space varies, environment varies from one space to the other, and then also time. Time, because when we talk about mankind, when we talk about our culture or heritage, the time is involved, and time factor is also very important. So these are the basic scope. And this is a diagram which I have taken from one of the textbooks, where you find all the four elements which are based on the basic research, and then there is the applied value of the same too. Now, this is a small, and we had enough of methodological explanations yesterday, so we are very familiar with this. This is just an outline where we say that the approach for cultural study is multidisciplinary. Each branch have their own methodology, and often they are overlapping with each other. Research design is the next step, where we depend on a clear statement of the research problem. So it varies from a problem to problem. Procedure, technique that are to be used for gathering information, method to be studied, methods to be used for processing and analyzing data, and finally, it can be summed up as library work, background study, then field work, analysis, and finally, report writing. Now, the anthropological methodology or the approaches that are taken for understanding culture and heritage. Geographical is these are all multidisciplinary. So, geography provides us with an idea about the space, latitude, longitude, where the thing is found, what kind of environment prevailed in that area, and thereby we get to know about ecology. And culture is very important because we know there are some points where the culture had begun, and some of the uh, discoveries were made. So, focus, area of the culture, distribution of culture, and also diffusion of one culture to the other culture. These are all we depend on the geographical methods. The geological method is very important. You see, there we get the geological, what we call stratigraphy, and there are various kinds of stratum that are present, and these vary on the depends on the geological law of superimposition, where we say that lower the stratum earlier the date if it is not disturbed. And so anything found in the particular stratum can give us an idea about the time factor and also environment, because the composition of each of the stratum tells in what kind of environment was responsible for the formation of the particular stratum. And thereby we get to know about the ecology. The paleontological approach, this is also part of geological approach, this is also part of zoological approach, this is also part of botanical approach, where we study fossil. Fossil not only of man, of animal, and also of plants. And this gives us, because some of the animals are time bound, time specific. So when we find a fossil, even if we don't know any date, we can always say that this was a warm kind of animal. So warm loving animal lived here, so the climate must have been warm. And simultaneously for other kind of climate, and thus we can reconstruct environment on the basis of paleontology also. Archaeological approach, as you know, it gives an idea of past culture. Then there are a lot other sciences like chemistry, physics, astronomy. These all are there because they provide analysis, chemical analysis. They provide also dating methods, and astronomy was also very important for understanding many of the cultural aspects. Especially, it is very important for us uh, in understanding our heritage in India. Anthropological approach is one of the approaches is anthropological specific, that is ethnoarchaeological, where the present day uh, population they study some of the areas, some of the behavior, some of the cultural aspects that, as Dr. Hebaman was saying, other culture, so that to reconstruct and superimpose the finding into the archaeological remains, and then we get to know. So overall synthesis is done by the anthropological approach. These are some of the very specific methods that are followed in anthropology. The anthropometry, this is a specific measurement of the body, that is called somatometry, of the bones, that is called craniometry. And so these are, you can see we have a specific instrument and we have specific methods, points, where we get to measure the body, and on the basis of the measurements we make some comparison, and then we get to know the variation of the living population and why they vary so much from each other or so little from each other, and also to understand the evolution from one species to the other. Primate study is also important because they are our closest relation, uh, and we get to know that what kind of behavior they have, what was the anatomy they have, and we can understand some of the, try to understand some of the behavioral aspect of our early species. And molecular biology now is very important. This is the DNA mapping, where now not only living but also fossils are now can be used for understanding DNA, and many of the problems are sorted out because of the discovery of the DNA mapping. The anthropological approach for Indic study is used in comparative anatomy and with anthropometry, reconstruction of stages of man, both biological and cultural, total synthesis of biology and culture of man in India through time and space. Now, humans lived in India so far as the absolute dates are available, that goes back to 2 million years before present. Then came, it was the group that first came, and there is a theory that the first migration took place, first man evolved in Africa, then it spread all over the world. And so the first group came, they were Homo erectus, not the same species as ours, but we belong to the same genus, Homo erectus. And he was the mainly stone user, but then there was an evolution which gave rise to Homo sapiens, and this we call ancient Homo sapiens or archaic type of modern man. And then we have the true Homo sapiens sapiens, that is what we are. So about 100,000 years back, Homo sapiens evolved, and we get the evidence of Homo sapiens sapiens from in India from 30,000 years before present. Now, the cultural stages are divided into Paleolithic, when men used mainly stone and they were hunter gatherers. Now, throughout the Pleistocene time period, that's the geological time period, up to 10,000 years, Paleolithic culture prevailed, and we call this period on the basis of the geological time scale. Then we have Mesolithic culture, where you see the man has become now a full-fledged modern man, and it is in the Holocene time period. It has evolved 10,000 years BP. Now they were still hunter-gatherers, but the thing is that they were no longer hunting or gathering any animal or any plant, but they were species specific. They were very choosy. And then came Neolithic stage. And Neolithic stage is where the food production, no longer they were in search of food, collecting food from nature, but they were the producer themselves. Then came, now all these three stages belong to Stone Age. And in the next stage, humankind discovered metal and metallurgy started. Now, the interesting thing you always will know that there are stages like copper age, bronze age, the metal age is divided into different categories. But ours here, we have a terminology which is called chalcolithic. Chalcolithic means both metal, that means copper, and at the same time, stoneware we use. As you see, metallurgy is a very specialized craft. So it was very costly too. So common people still went on using stones. So that's why we had to choose a new name, and we call it chalcolithic, and it rather coincides with this well, sort of culture that are found in other places like Europe and all. And gradually then next iron as metal came, and iron has a great advantage over copper or bronze as a metal. And these you see this is the hunting weapon, but they have got the sickles. So they had started to have a digging with a sharper and stronger element, and culture flourished very much. But Iron Age is no longer in the prehistoric state, because it has early historic state, we call it, in India. Now, I have given a special emphasis on urbanization because I will be mainly talking our heritage from the Indus Valley civilization, because there are a lot more misconception regarding this Indus Valley stages. Although a long time ago, there many of the mysteries had been solved, but even then, I would like to talk about it as a part of our cultural heritage. Now, the 3,000 years saw the appearance of Indus Valley civilization. Peak of the civilization was at 2,500. Now, this urban, why it is called urbanization, urban, because there are, especially Child, he had said that there should be 10 specific characters, which actually gives a definition to urbanization, that is great increase in the size and settlement, institution of tribute, taxation, monumental public work, art of writing, beginning of exact sciences, arithmetic, trade, full-time technical specialists, privileged ruling class, organized society on basis of residence instead of kinship, which led to state formation and the revival of natural uh, rustic art. So life became much more comfortable than it was earlier. Now, this is the moot point about understanding culture of India. Development of culture in India was not unilateral. That what I have just shown, Paleolithic, then Mesolithic, then Neolithic, then Chalcolithic, then Ionic. No, it was not unilateral. maybe we sum up and give this unilinear picture, but it was not like it was never synchronized. It was rather diversified. Many of the times when hunting gathering, there are lots of people who are still hunter gatherers, although they started at a time period earlier than those of even Neolithic or urbanization, but they are still there, we find, and they are, we call them as cultural backwater, but they have their own space, own culture, own behavioral aspect and society. So folk culture and urban culture, this is I have tried to show in the map that how these are the diverse land of diversity and diverse culture. So now I come back to again to uh, the composers of Veda and also of a river which was equally important in the Indus system, and that is the river Saraswati. River Saraswati is a lost river. It is a lost river which had now it was flowing through the Thor Desert, which has now been had disappeared into the desert sand. Only the up to the Gangar part it is there. Now, what happened that in around 1900 BC there was a tectonic movement, and because of this tectonic movement, the course of Saraswati or there was also a course of
Dr. Ranjana
change
Ray,
in the Indus system, but Saraswati suffered most because the bottom of the Saraswati. Hello, hello.
hello, ma'am. We are facing some technical glitches, so
Right.
we cannot hear your voice properly. So, could you please repeat?
From where? Just now?
Uh, yeah, yeah. Uh,
This slide.
yes, the previous line also.
The
Thank
previous.
you.
Okay. Uh, this is what now can you hear now?
Yeah, you have explained this slide, ma'am. The present slide which you are explaining. So
Yes.
there, for 2 minutes we didn't hear you properly. So in that slide, if you can continue for 2 more minutes, I think will be good.
This one or
Yeah, the
earlier?
next, is this the slide from which you are presenting, ma'am, or the next slide?
This was when I went to the next slide. You told me that you could not hear me.
Yeah, yeah. Then, ma'am, could you please explain this slide?
Okay, I will
Okay.
go
Yeah.
on explaining this. Which what I was saying that we had the culture not in a unilinear fashion. Right? Just in the earlier slide, I said that there had been culture like Paleolithic, which developed into Mesolithic, then it developed into Neolithic, then we have Chalcolithic, then we have Iron Age. But it was not unilinear in that way in India, because India, as you see, is a land of environmental diversity, geographical diversity that has given rise to the environmental diversity, which gave rise to cultural diversity. Even in the present day, we find people who are still hunter gatherers, like the Paleolithic, or if not Paleolithic, but of like the Mesolithic people, and where there are also some places where we call them, they are not urbanized, so we call them as cultural backwater, but not it is, we would rather see them in the light of cultural diversity, which is still present in India, because culture varies from one region to the other according to the need of the population. There is a need theory when people say that people did not, when they are satisfied with and at equilibrium with their economy and with their environment, they don't need to change further. So now I come back to what I was going to say about our heritage, and in this we go back to the composers of the Rig Veda, and there we find that they are talking about a river which is called the Saraswati River. Saraswati was the largest of the seven rivers that were present in the Indus system. Rather, now the historians would like to call it as Indus Saraswati system. Now, what happened? Then you see, this is the Indus Valley. This is the Saraswati course, and this is the Great Thor Desert. So what happened? That there was a tectonic movement in 1900 BC. Then Saraswati rose up, and the change of the their change taking place took place in the course of the river Saraswati. Saraswati was no longer navigable as it was. But it took a long time to happen this. Slowly, the river became moribund, and then there were also lots of problems that started. So what happened that people moved not towards Indus, but they moved towards Ganga Valley. Because Ganga Valley also, because of that tectonic movement, Ganga Valley also has changed. Jamuna has also changed its course, joined the river Ganga, and they migrated, people slowly migrated, and it took place, the second phase of urbanization took place in Ganga. All of you, the historians, all of you know about it, but recently, whatever is done in Varanasi with R.C. Sharma Research Institute, in collaboration with the Geological Survey of India and in collaboration with Archaeological Survey of India, they have, the book has been written by Vidula Jaiswal, and they have found out that the Ganga Valley was not suitable for human habitation. The valley was not formed until 7,000 years back. From 7,000 years back, it was suitable for habitation. And then along the Ganga Valley, there are on the northern side, we have Himalayas, which is still rising. And on the southern side of the Ganga Valley, we have Vindhyan Range, which is stable. It was inhabited by people. And so the foothills of Indus were inhabited by Mesolithic people, and they even slowly entered into the Gangetic Plain. But slowly, after 1900 BC, Ganga Valley became urban centers, important urban center. Iron came into the valley at around 1200 BC. So people would say, historians say that Iron Age began roughly around 1200 BC, but we cannot fix it like that. And then the earliest settlement of Ganga, the excavation that had been taken place recently by at Ramnagar and in Varanasi, and the area was settled by the later Vedic people. So this is a map which I have taken from Michel Danino's book, and you see this is the river, the ancient river, which Danino would call as lost river Saraswati. And you see most of the sites of Indus Saraswati system are now here. These are all found after independence, and these are all, most of the sites are here, less than compared to what are there in the Indus. So Saraswati gives us a great clue about our early culture. So there we know that about the Aryan inversion model. The Aryan inversion is based on linguistic conjecture, and actually Max Mueller had started this while he was, he had translated Veda, also Gita and others in Oxford University. But there was some misconception. Not only that, but at the same time, there was some Eurocentrism. And not only Eurocentrism, but at the same time, there was less amount of archaeological data. So for that reason, this kind of conjecture was made. And if you read into the book of Mortimer Wheeler, you will find that in 5 writings he had written that we are making this conjecture because of paucity of data. Now, the evidences have come up from geology, geography, astronomy, archaeology, linguistics, anthropology, DNA analysis. These have all proved that there was no such invasion from anywhere. The culture that we are proud about is developed in its own soil. Of course, we cannot deny that there had been some influence from outside in the form of cultural diffusion, small migrations, but not never invasion, as we believed earlier. And other evidences that are come for cultural continuity between Indus Saraswati system, civilization, and subsequent Hindu society and culture is marked in the religious ideas, in arts, crafts, architecture, writing style, system of weights and measures. I want to mention this work that has been done in Center for Molecular Biology, Hyderabad, and Professor Lalji Singh was the head there, and he has written a presented a paper in a seminar, and which is published in a volume. Uh, they are Mystery of Our Origin. The name of the paper is Mystery of Our. Now, what is there? This is the map, and you see they had taken mitochondrial sample from the various groups of people from this is the Andamanis, the yellow orange one is from the Andamanis, and then the green ones are Austroasiatic, these are linguistic speaking people, Austroasiatic group, the green points, then Dravidians are the blue ones, Indo-Europeans are the red ones, and Indo-Burman are the pinkish ones. So they have taken the mitochondrial sample, and you see they have taken their sample from all kinds of groups, starting from Kashmiri Brahmins, Pundits, Kharia, Urumba. These are all the Australite, Bhil, and Santal, Tharu, Vaishno. These are the people as well as Kashmiri Brahman, Pundit, and also such other things. And they have plotted them. And when the mitochondrial of the Indian people, of which we boast about having a different kind of caste structure or being a tribal, difference is only 0.01 in the mitochondrial level. So that has proved that the migration might have been, there had been lots of people like Greek invasion, there had been later on many more invasion, but at the base we have all the same mitochondrial feature. Now we come to the script. Script, as you know, it is an enigma. Though people have tried, many people have tried. Esa Rao had done some work, but contradiction remains. That is why I think it is still proto-historic period because the writing has not been deciphered. And this is the this begins with this. The Dholavara we begin with this. This is the signboard which is found on a northern gate at the Indus civilization site called Dholavira in Gujarat, in the Kutch area. And then in the script, you find that there are so many evidences of in the script and in seals and in pottery and other places that they get the seal, the script. They had definite script. And then when we look at the Brahmi script, this is some of the attempts that had been made for study. The Brahmi script, because Brotin Bandopadhyay, he was a great person who had done a lot of study on the script of, of ancient India. And you see, this is the Brahmi script. Ashokan, it is found in the Ashokan edict, and then the later derivation of Brahmo script is found during the Gupta period. And so he was a scholar, expert about this. Now, what I can show is the earliest writing on a Torah terracotta, which is found, and this has been deciphered, and it says that a sacred land bounded by Saraswati, Ila Vattati Vara. And now we come to the Indus Valley civilization, which I have just explained, and this is just a pictorial version. This is the extent of the Indus Valley civilization. And then we have the Ganga Valley, which is very much well established at the present moment with the work that has been done in last few years by the people in that area with geological survey, as I have said already. And Ganga Valley, gradually, there were two in Upanishad and other, you get the evidence that there were two place, ways of entering. Uttarapath along the foothills of the Ganga and Dakshinapath, that is along the Vindhyan range. And gradually here the urban center from rishi type of habitation, ashrama type of habitation, gradually the great Janapada and the cityscape. And at this juncture, there people had discovered iron, and iron became the monopoly, and iron ores of Singhum became monopoly of the Mauryan dynasty, and thus the state formation was very much apparent. Now, this is another factor for understanding of that is Kritika Nakshatra. Kritika Nakshatra is the nakshatra which was present over the land of Saptashindava and Indus Saraswati system, which was described in Rigveda. Now, Bal Gangadhar Tilak in 19th century had pointed this out, and he said that Rigveda was actually composed in this land because the position of the Kritika Nakshatra showed that they were really on the land of the Saptasiddhava, that has been mathematically also calculated. Now, this is the Kritika, and you find that there are other constellations, how they are arranged and how it moves. Now, Kritika had very important role in under Indus Valley civilization. Citadel of Mohenjo-daro points to an east-west alignment because Kritika always rose from east and went to west during um, there when rose in east and went down in the west. And so they followed this. The Mohenjo-daro town planning. They followed Vedic astronomy. And this is attested by astrophysicists of the present day. And many things point to Harappan origin of Nakshatra calendar also. And Rigveda, on the basis of this, the astronomy is dated to 2500 BC. Science and technology was there, which all of you know. The bricks that are found, they followed uniformity of ratio 1 is to 2 is to 4, then weights and measures, and Arthashastra's Onguli unit in Kotila Shastra, the Onguli unit is 17.78 centimeter, and then the units of Lothal scale, the scale that has been found at Lothal of Harappan civilization also measures 1.703, almost the same. And use of decimal system was very much of there. And for example, Rigveda itself is divided into 10 bandalam. The bronze technology, this is lost wax process, and this process is followed by our present day Dhokra artists. Dhokra art, we are all familiar with that, and this is the famous dancing girl. And so it is made by a way of metal crafting, which is still followed. In the vast amount of ornaments that I found from these areas, the gold, silver, semi-precious stones, the most important one is the conch shell bangle. This kind of bangle is still used, and this Bisht has found out this, and this is a workshop site of conch shell. Conch shell is very important, and this where the conch shell was being prepared. Conch shell not only is important, and the wearing of ornament also is the same way. This is a lady from the Kutch area, and she is wearing conch shell bangles. Our dancing girl also was wearing conch shell bangles like that. And you see, this is a burial which came out from Lothal. The body also had the conch shells which were there while the body was fresh. And here we also have the similar sort of dressing up of the men. Now, pottery tradition. This is Indus Valley pottery. and the pottery tradition, these are the present day pottery. Now, the way these were made were by on wheel, and similar way how the people make wheel made pottery. I have done study on pottery making, and I have found that wheel is not the totally made, all the pot is not made totally on the wheel, as all of you must be knowing. The upper part is made on wheel and then it is beaten up by hand, and the shape is of the bottom is given. So this is still, they were discovered here. Even beyond that, in Neolithic time period, they were making pottery in this way, and still we are continuing with the same kind of manufacture of pottery. This is our bull cart, and which is we are still familiar. This is what is a toy cart, which is found in Indus Valley culture, and this is still continuing. Even in, I have seen in the main street of Delhi. I'm not speaking about Kolkata, that there are people there, there were cow carts and they were carrying their goods in the cow cart and going, and we were running, the cars were running also side by side. And they say that there was no chariot and no horses, but there recently there had been the discoveries made of the bronze objects of chariot and horses. This is what the ritualistic objects are: the lamp, common tulu, vermilion, conch shell, then plants, people tree. I think you see common tulu, these are very much similar to the ones that we found there. In the earliest time period, the type of trident, the nature worship, and conch shell was very important, not only for blowing trumpet or making ornaments, but also as a libation ware. As you know, the probably chess and dice were also uh, had their origin there, because there are the evidences. Agriculture is very important. The interesting part is that in the northwest part of in India, they had the same way of tilling the soil, plowing the soil. The measurements are given, and the same is followed, and see that this is an excavated field found from Kalibangan, and this is a present day field, plowed field, and they follow the same ridge and same pattern of plowing. So plowshare is found at Manawali side, plowed field is found at Karibangan, boats are found which are still present in the seals. They have the flat bottom, and in India they still have the flat bottom boats. Then, as you know, the swastika, endless knot, fire, sacrificial altar, these have continued from the Indus Valley period, the symbolism. So symbolism that we call our own, of our religion, that's started with the Indus Valley civilization, or it may have been earlier than that. These are some of the seals which you see, which are also very important. And you see the animals. There are some mythical animals, but at the same time there are the writings and how they worship. It is the mythical animal, unicorn, and there's the offering of a vase uh, uh, to the sacred animal. Then belief in afterlife, but there was no this great display of wealth. Unlike Egypt and Sumer, the emphasis was more on life and not so much on death as of present. But they have also placed some of the uh, grave goods, and they probably had those for the use of the departed in the afterlife. The water is important element for daily life and for cleanliness. So there are the in the Mohenjo-daro, there are the water drainage system. There are the great bath and tanks and reservoirs, and in Lothal there are the pavements and drains for bathing. Now we come to the religion, which of course it has come in the slides earlier. But what John Marshall said, who was in charge of the excavations of Indus Valley civilization, John Marshall said that religion could hardly be distinguished from still living Hinduism. This is Pashupatinath, Shiva, you have the lingam there. It actually from Mehekar lingam is found, and this is the seal depicting seven priestesses whose priestess is performing some kind of ritual, and there is a deity, and this is the fertility symbol or mother goddess. Yoga, yoga is very old, and there are structures which Shiva position, postures of Shiva-like position in yoga. There are yoga, Anjali Pranam. These are the sorts of evidences that are found, and there are also deity that were there in the and also unicorn and bull, which still persists. So yoga and people tree, which are so important in our daily religious life, those also were presented in the Indus Saraswati system. So we have a very long heritage of yoga, of people tree, of worship of bull, of worship of Shiva, and such other phenomena. So what happened that subsequent culture that came up, as I have said, that the culture, Vedic culture, which was found here, it was not due to any transplant from outside, but it was of a gradual development in the soils of the subcontinent. It was not monolithic, but it had integrated many regional features and variations, indigenous trait, new development, diffusion, acculturation. These are all happened to give rise to what we are our culture, Indian culture at present. Cultural pattern vary regionally and are well suited to respective environment. Profound belief in karma and transmigration of soul had been established. So if we look at the cultural pattern of our heritage of the Indian culture, we find it changed very little since the time of the Upanishad. So I have got some references if anyone uh, is interested can look at it. And the most available ones are by Ferenstein, George Ferenstein, Shubhashtak, and David Frawley, In Search of Riddleland, and Michel Denino's Indian Culture and India's Future. So these are the books which we will give and look at.
Thank you, ma'am, for your very much informative and analytical presentation. And we have many questions, but as we are running shortage of time, so I would like to take three questions for you. So the first question is by Abdul Adil Parai, and his question is, what research methodology, I'm sorry, what research methodology can be employed while working on prehistoric cultures?
Oh, those methodologies, I think I have explained. Uh, Basically, there are exploration and excavation, which are done to understand, to get uh, prehistoric evidences. And then stratigraphy is also very important, and then analysis of tools where petrology and other understanding are very important. To know about the prehistoric culture, you have to know about the type of stones they use and why they used and where they lived. So you have to find that site, you have to find the tools, then you have to get the dates, and then you have to reconstruct through paleontological evidences, geological evidences, geographical evidences, a multi-pronged approach designs. But basically, you have to exploration work and excavation work.
Thank you, ma'am. There is one more question, rather two questions. The second question is by Wujang Bobade. His question is, new research about Saraswati by Dr. Vashant Shinde and team is authentic, or some scholars deny it. What's your opinion?
No, I won't say anything because the new this Indus Saraswati system and the findings of Indus Saraswati system, these are uh, changing and developing with new and new evidences. So I won't be commenting on it. Uh, Whether it is to be believed or not, definitely they have got their own points, they have got their evidences on the basis of which they have uh, made these conclusions.
Thank you, ma'am. The last question which I'm taking, and I'm sorry, dear participants, as we don't have much time to take up all the questions, and we will be surely mailing your questions to our respected speakers. So, the last question for day two is by Dr. Akanksha Nathani, and her question is: so, if what you are saying is a historical fact, then what's the merit of Saraswati excavation that they are trying to undertake now?
I don't understand what you meant by Saraswati excavation because Saraswati is the Moribund River and it is established that there was Saraswati by satellite, by excavation, and of course they have they have charted the course of the river by excavating the bed, river bed. And it is very interesting. If you read the books, you'll get to know that the Saraswati system, where it had been at that long time back in 1857, when there was so-called the Sipahi Revolution, that the British soldier, could go by a way which was actually the old riverbed of Saraswati, which later on came up, and they could get water at a very low level at those beds. And later on, large scale excavations, large scale work that has been going on still now, that had pointed out. And excavation to on the banks, they are, of course, they are giving the sites of the early township, early centers, civilization center, which I have shown you in the map how much they are. So they need to be excavated because more and more sites are found out. The area is expanding of the industrial system.